For we don't the carbon to the west, to the west. The mercury is rising, no relief on the horizon. Just 7 days of summer to survive. Stay alive.
The Canby Report was produced and recorded on the traditional territories of the Coquitlam, Mississaugas of the Credit, Anishinaabeg, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples.
It's August 25th, 2023, and there are 1,149 days left until the Vancouver municipal elections. This is the Canby Report. I'm Matthew Naylor.
I'm Ian Bushfield. Welcome back to our bi-weekly, once-a-month show.
Yeah, we're firing on all cylinders.
It's summer.
It's summer, and honestly, we're doing better than we were at this point in the last election cycle.
Ooh. What was that people just heard off the top of this show, Matthew?
So that was a song I wrote. I was doing some reading about the 2021 heat wave, which was like truly awful, and you can refer to our previous episode, the Cruel Summer Edition, if you want to relive that particular time in all of our lives. But as it turns out, it was in fact the deadliest weather event in Canadian history. And I thought, well, if this, folk music does this kind of thing. If there is going to be a disaster, then it should have a song written about it at the very least. So I wrote it. I was going through a bit of a heat thing out in Toronto myself, and it just made me think back on that time. It was truly terrible. And one of the things I didn't mention in the song was that over 1 billion sea creatures died as well. But yeah, I believe we're including the full song at the end of the episode, and please give it a listen. I don't really know what I'm going to do with it, but there it is for your listening pleasure. Yeah, the other thing that made me think about it was that my brother was recently evacuated from Kelowna because of the fires there, and so it is a good time to remember that most fires in BC are human caused. So we can all, only we can stop forest fires.
Yeah, there are some of the lightning strikes, but we all need to be much more careful. I was out camping last weekend, and it was my kids' first time camping, and we couldn't have a fire. And I'm pretty sure they will never actually get to sit around a campfire in their lives.
Yeah, unless they go in the winter.
Yeah. We might bring one of those propane things next time. We have one of those in our backyard. We just didn't have the space with all the crap you have to drag with 2 little kids. But it's bleak. Thankfully, there's a little bit of good news in the last few days on the wildfires in the Okanagan. The Shuswap, meanwhile, isn't doing that great. I talked about that with Scott on Politicos this week. Especially the weird counter-protest to the wildfire crews is a terrible story that we don't need to get into here. But basically, the convoy chuds are against all lockdowns, including fire restrictions and stuff.
Okay, well, I don't know. I think of that episode of The West Wing, and it's there's a voter out there that thinks, I like this Bartlett fellow, but now that I see that he's in favor of fire, except it's the opposite. It's the voters that are totally insane.
Support more independent folk music and podcasting at patreon.com/Canby Report.
Yes, patreon.com/Canby Report, your source for citizen journalism here in the internet, I guess. I should note that we technically, while labeling ourselves as citizen journalism, are not banned from Facebook yet.
Yes, I think our Facebook page is still working. I almost never post anything there, but I'm pretty sure you can share canbyreport.ca links on Facebook, so share our podcast as the only news on Facebook. I think Politicos is also available on Facebook too, so share the Leg and Boot Media podcasts all over your Facebook page. Maybe I should start putting more blog and written content, or maybe that would get us flagged. I don't know. I don't have time for this until we get paid more.
No. So, what's been happening in Vancouver? So, I was on the Board of Variance up until December of last year, and apparently it's just gone to total shit in my absence. That's unfair. The people who are on the Board of Variance are like good folks, but like they are responsive to public pressure. And Dan Fumano has a recent story out about how a Vancouver neighborhood mobilized and defeated a daycare. Just bane of property values. Children.
This is a wild one. So this daycare operator runs the Douglas Park Academy, which is right by Douglas Park in... I don't actually even know what the neighborhood's called. It's between Oak and Cambie. It's kind of near Shaughnessy. It's not quite Mount Pleasant. I don't have the maps in front of me, but, you know, a lot of homes there, a lot of single-family homes, some apartments within walking distance. And we have a daycare shortage across the province, and especially in the city of Vancouver. The city has a bylaw on zoning around daycares that you can open them in residential neighborhoods, but there are certain levels where if you want to do an expansion or otherwise include it, you have to go through the Board of Variance to essentially get permission. Like, they're allowed with, like, making sure it's within the neighborhood character and all that stuff the Board of Variance is responsible for. Mm-hmm. And in this case, the neighbors decided that a one-story daycare with 8 kids, that was fine. But if she's going to 2 stories, it's going to be wild, and you won't be able to open your window between noon and 1 and 4 and 5 without, like, the noise destroying your peace and sanctity in this rural area. These are rural, suburban area. These are the actual comments people were making opposing this. They were massively terrified of the increased traffic, which I guess would come from the drop-offs, because no one would be... Like, people don't park at daycares. You have a couple ECEs, and that's about it. In the end, the Board of Variance heard the concerns and unanimously rejected the application to expand.
Yeah, which is brutal. I will say that, like, during my time on the Board of Variance, I mostly met by Zoom or by video conferencing. And so the actual appearance of, like, a room full of people who are all asking you, like, quite angrily in some cases, to do something is a significant pressure to a public board. It is a... Like, you're going to have to walk out of the room and, like, walk through that crowd of people. And that can be quite intimidating. I think it is a lesson on how democracy does not stop at elections.
Yes. That is a very important lesson.
So if you see a development permit application that you support, at the very least, go... like, write something to the email that you are provided, if not go to the meeting. If it is being opposed in a kind of organized manner, the only thing that is going to get it passed is a counter-organization.
I want to dig into this more because Fumano did such a fantastic job on this story. He highlighted the comments of several people in this, and it's worth just, like, reading some of them to understand why people were so mad. So one of the first neighbors was Brian Piers. He wrote in his written comments, among other things, that if this precedent is set, there is nothing stopping another homeowner to convert their home into a funeral home, motorcycle repair shop, corner store, gym, dry cleaner. And then he threatened legal action.
Okay, number one, that's not... No. Like, legal action for what cause? Like, why? What would you sue? What's your cause of action there, sir?
Another neighbor, Mark Goodman, complained about the traffic that would come if 16 parents were having to be picked up and dropped off 5 days a week, never minding that a good daycare is a neighborhood daycare where you can walk to, like mine is, with my kids. Mm-hmm. What's hilarious here is Fumano notes that Goodman's email identifies him as the principal of Goodman Commercial, a local commercial real estate firm, which in his industry newsletter has argued in favor of increasing the pace and density of real estate development in the city. I guess that doesn't include the pace and development of daycare developments.
Yeah, the necessary amenities that make places worth living. Who could have thought? Like, I just don't understand. Like, a lot of these comments are very red herring-y. a lot of them are just like weird NIMBYism.
Like James Leto, a former longtime senior planner with the city of Vancouver, who called it "It's too much, a bridge too far," and threatened that this doesn't reflect the zoning of the area, which is not for quote-unquote institutional uses. This is literally across from a park. People are complaining about children being noisy in a daycare that would be positioned across from a park that includes playgrounds.
Yeah. Like, I actually just don't understand what the logic was on the part of a lot of these people. Daycares don't decrease property values. They make communities more livable. It's like, it improves your buyer base if you're thinking of selling property. Like, I just don't get it.
Yeah, Fumano had a follow-up story on how parents are outraged by this. This story, like, lit up what's left of Van Poly Twitter. And so, yeah, people were naturally outraged and upset. City councilors have started to react to this, saying, this seems ridiculous, and they're going to look into it in whichever ways they can. It's the slow period of the summer, so I haven't followed up to see which motions have actually moved through council, if any, but I think there have been some questions to staff about, like, come on.
Lisa Dominato has put forward some questions to staff. In specific instances, does council have the authority to overturn a decision at the Board of Variance? And the broader systemic issue is, how do we prevent situations like this? Which is, you can't.
No, you change the zoning.
Yeah, you, like... Yeah, fair enough. You
abolish the Board of Variance.
I mean...
Probably not the best solution.
It's I think that's a bad idea. I think the Board of Variance isn't actually, in general, does good work, like, with a zoning system that is, like, overly restricted. But, like, this is what I mean when they say, you know, democracy doesn't stop at elections. If you have a bunch of people who are going to effectively, I don't want to say intimidate, but, like, lobby, you know, speak out forcefully at the Board of Variance, they are going to listen.
I think this leads us well into a story from Kelowna, and I think we've only talked about Kelowna once or twice on this podcast, and that was following the last election, but there was just a wild story from the development permit process in Kelowna over a 25-story rental housing tower that was going to go in downtown, where council has voted to reconsider its approval of that after it turned out that the developer had paid 24 speakers $250 each to come and speak in favor of it.
I don't know if this is not allowed.
The developer says there's no law against this, and if they rescind our approval because of this, we're going to sue them. Like, it's one of those things that feels very illegal.
It feels illegal, but, like, who are they? Like, they're not bribing anyone. I just, like, I don't think it is illegal. I think it should be. It feels like it should be. It feels shady. But, like, I just don't know. It just definitely seems very...
Like, they are specifically defending it, calling it a $250 per diem paid by the public relations vendor to students who spent time, effort, and in many cases, hard costs for travel or missed works in order to participate. They have not hidden the reimbursement. They've been transparent whenever asked about it, and they say, quote, "This did not break any rules, policies, or laws, and in fact, we know many who speak in opposition do so because of their bias, as most have financial motivations." And, like, I mean, it's kind of true, but also, like, there is a substantive difference between an e-transfer of $250 and, like, this change will affect my financial situation down the long term.
Yeah, even though the latter is probably more valuable, like, I don't know, I feel like...
This is classic corruption, right? This is the classic, like, conflict of interest kind of situation that may not be explicitly banned because no one thought it would happen at this level and this blatantly, so they never wrote the law to stop it. But, like, when people think about dirty politics, it's like money in paper bags, and that's what this is. It's not like always in the long term, this will affect the property values, and therefore there will be an increase in their financial net position. No, cash in paper bags is dirty stuff.
But, okay, so, like, what if, to compensate people for having to take time out of the day, go speak at a public hearing, take time off work, they invited people to, and a +1 or whatever, to a, cruise on Lake Okanagan, open bar that evening, full spread, food, drinks, etc. Would that be...
You know the law better than I do, but I feel like most conflict of interest law, when it gets written, recognizes a gift to be more than just cash in a paper bag.
Yeah, but, like, conflict of interest laws has to deal with...
And bribery laws.
Like, it's abuse of public office. These people don't have public office.
I think what would be a decent system here is this does highlight that speaking at a public hearing is prohibitive, right? It is an effort and a personal cost to do so, whether that's just the time, the annoyance, the fear you have to get over to get there. And I'm not against people being compensated for that. But if we're only compensating one, like, subset of views, that's problematic. Like, if we're going to compensate someone, let's compensate everyone who shows up.
That full on feels like a way to take the already messy and messed up public.
That just underlines that public hearings are broken, not that.
Yeah, no, they are absolutely broken, and like, am I opposed to this development? No, it's a good development.
Seems like it.
Like, it's stupid that it's called Muse, because, like, fucking everything is called Muse. I don't know why we can't, like, it's just ironic that like, it speaks to creativity and yet belies a complete lack of creativity. At any rate, like, I don't know that the firm doesn't have a case if they plan on suing. Like, they absolutely should look at whether or not, they could take action to either force the city to reissue the permit, or, like, this is the kind of investigative stuff that the city theoretically should be doing. Maybe it just becomes a standard question. Were you paid to be here today? Who knows?
Back in Vancouver, someone who thinks they have a lawsuit and a reasonable grounds for one is BD Group, the developer, as an appeal board has decided that, in fact, the rent they are paying on the Kingsgate Mall land, which is owned by the Vancouver School Board, should be set at the maximum possible use value of that land rather than the current zoning that is all BD can actually use it for. Substantively, this means BD's rent has jumped from $1 million to $9 million a year, which is a lot, because you could do a lot with that bit of land there at Broadway and Main Street. It's a very prime piece of real estate, but it's also a very small little mall right now.
Mm-hmm. It's Vancouver's weirdest mall.
Yeah. And so,
honestly, I love Kingsgate Mall. Yeah. It's great.
What Francis Biela found in the court documents, though, is that among its arguments, Vancouver School Board has said that they are considering selling that land, and so they should be able to price it at whatever they want, or I guess if they don't get to price it at a higher amount, maybe they'll just sell it off. And this kind of raises the long-standing debate over that piece of land, because it's been in the school board's possession for quite a long time, since there used to actually be a school there. But now the question is, do they hold on to it in the hopes of building a future school there, particularly as that area densifies, or do they sell it off and just let it become another high-rise in the area, which also needs more housing?
Yeah, and like that is an interesting question. I almost feel like this is an opportunity for the school board to actually do the kind of work with the developer to, like, put a school with a tower that, like, actually has housing for families in it. Like, we build a lot of housing that effectively is just like financial instruments. It's like one bedroom, pocket bedroom, whatever. And that isn't a great place for people to live, especially if they have a family. If you want families to, like, live in these high density areas, so much so that, like, schools become necessary in them, then you gotta build the units that they can live in.
Yeah, I think this is a prime area for the school board to get into housing development. We saw TransLink has the capacity now to do transit-oriented development, and they're starting to exercise that power. The school board could do a lot of really good stuff here. 18, which values like $50 million, and they're like, we're not going to pay you any rent if you're going to demand $50 million from us. Screw that. And so it's all in appeals at the Supreme Court right now, and the board can't take that unilateral action, is at least the one thing Judge Michael Stevens has ruled. But yeah, this is a messy dispute.
Yeah, it is. Moving down Broadway, one stop, I think, on the as yet to be built Broadway line to the City Hall station, where Ken Sim has some new staff.
Yeah, it was not a public announcement, but there is a new director of communications in the mayor's office, Dan Fumano, who is fantastic.
The irony.
Yeah. Well, a good director of communications should never be the news.
Yeah, fair enough.
Harrison Fleming has joined the mayor's office. He comes to BC from the premier's offices of Jason Kenney of the UCP and Doug Ford of the Ontario PCs. Kent Clark on Twitter points out that this kind of ties together a theme of the mayor's office, which is a lot of staff from the federal Conservatives, including Karima Alam, who worked with Pierre Poilievre, Trevor Ford, who also worked with Pierre Poilievre, that's Chief of Staff and Director of Operations, respectively, Melissa Morphy from Andrew Wilkinson's campaign, Patrick O'Connor from Christy Clark's campaign, basically just a lot of either BC Liberals or federal Conservatives, which shouldn't really be surprising to many, although I did see a lot of people pointing out, like, when they launched ABC, they marketed it as a centrist political party, but here they have kind of just adopted the staff of mostly the right wing.
Yeah. Part of it is because there are just more of those people available. A lot of the federal liberals who want jobs have been sucked up by the federal government, and those of them who, because the federal government just pays more, you get it's a better job. You have to live in Ottawa, but trade-offs. Some of these parties have just been in power for a certain amount of time, and Vancouver is a lovely place to live. I can understand why the people who are taking these types of jobs are, part of the political class and, just jumping at opportunities. It's rare that new governments take office and are hiring a bunch of people, and the timing just appears right.
I think there's two other things to note here. First, one other thing Kent Clark brought up is, why does a mayor's office of 10 people need a chief of staff and a director of operations? And when you go down this list, most people are directors, which it's great if you can get that title, but if you're a director of one, are you really directing anything? And there is that small bit of hypocrisy here around how ABC and Ken Sim ran quite openly critical of Kennedy Stewart and the bloated communications budgets of City Hall, hiring, a number of people to fill that staff. But I think we're both on the page of a city of 600,000 people should have a competent administration.
Yeah. I don't begrudge it. It takes people to run a government. And I think that the idea of trying to get elected officials to do that, especially given how that they, especially in Vancouver, they have to be in public fucking hearings all fucking day, is insane. So we of course need these people. Otherwise, it's just unelected staff who are running anything. And sure, I know these people are unelected, but they are responsive to politics, which is something that staff are less so.
The other main question is, what level of competency do these individuals have in municipal politics? If you're bringing a lot of people from provincial and federal politics, there are some skills that translate in terms of the communications and navigating that. But municipal politics is also a very different beast in many ways. We've seen that when some people jump from running a campaign to chief of staff and trying to manage City Hall like it's a political party caucus, when really it's a bunch of independents who could do whatever they want and face no consequences.
Yeah.
It's challenging.
It is challenging. it will be interesting to see how this works. Maybe it's a good hire. Maybe it's an absolute, boneheaded move. But we will see. Stay tuned, I guess.
In terms of things the city is trying to do, though, there's a story here in Business in Vancouver that the city is once again trying to close some hookah shops in town. These are traditional quote-unquote smoking places that exist within the city. This bylaw is using the excuse that they are violating smoking prohibitions, alleging that they are using tobacco when the owners are saying that they are in fact using alternatives that are tobacco-free.
Like, why? Who fucking cares? Like, I just feel like if people want to go to a place that is specifically designed and advertised as having tobacco as the primary purpose of the establishment, and, like, then let them. Like, why? Why do we have to be so, like, insistent on, like, running everything? Sometimes you just gotta let something go. Ugh.
The owner of one of these, the Persian Tea House, is Mohammedan Hamid Abdulhamid. He faced a previous challenge in 2015 where the city tried to shut him down, and at that point he decided to go on a hunger strike for 30 days, after which the city finally went, fine, just whatever. And, and largely they've been trying to look at possibly amending the bylaws, and this includes some moves by city council to look at this, or at least city councilors, to essentially exempt his business from the bylaw, but if he sells it or dies, the exemption won't pass on. And I guess that's the reasonable conclusion here, but, like, if they're not doing tobacco, I'm still struggling to understand what the problem is. Like, I get the health issues with tobacco, but also we've seen that prohibition doesn't work.
No.
And so,
also, like, it's just nice to have like one. I think you could have one tobacco license. Like, I don't even fucking care if they fucking have the tobacco there. Like, just why?
well, it's an element of cultural, right? Culture,
exactly.
right? Not everything needs to fit a very specific viewpoint, and there are people who come from countries where hookah smoking is quite prevalent, and if we want them to feel welcome in what we call a multicultural society, that includes allowing them to do the things they do, even if they are harmful to the health, because so is cannabis smoking, but we're allowing that. So is drinking alcohol, but we allow that. So is driving, but we allow that.
Driving is the worst of all of them. wait until we hear my plans for a chairlift up Main Street. Total nonsense. Yeah, like, if we're going to allow smoking at the Cannabis Culture Lounge, like, just having one, like, grandfathered, hookah bar is fine. Hookah lounge, it's fine. Just deal with it, City Council.
Well, out in my neck of the woods, there's been a couple interesting, I think, proposals come to our City Council here in Coquitlam for new developments. One is another subdivision up Burke Mountain. This is getting quite high up the mountain at this point, and a developer wants to put 19 single-family homes in a lot on Harper Road. Like I said, quite a ways up. It's zoned largely for single-family homes yet, or it might not even be yet, but they want to put single-family homes around all the other single-family homes. This passed council with a dissent, and we will talk about that in a second. But what was notable here is most of council was quite critical of this, actually, including Mayor Richard Stewart, who has been mayor through the development of most of the single-family home developments up Burke Mountain, as far as I know. The mayor has said that this should be the end of the era of the single-family home in Coquitlam.
Sometimes you do a thing, and then you say, that's enough, and end it, I guess.
Councillor Robert Mazzarolo was the lone dissent opposing this plan entirely. he had said our city has many very beautiful single-family house neighborhoods. I live in one of them. But he goes on to say, I don't believe we should remove all of them. That's nice for me. Some should stay. However, I do not believe we should be creating more given where the market is now, and that this is not an appropriate use of the land. So there is some growing change. I think we're starting to see even in the suburbs that density is necessity going forward.
Yeah. And I'm not certain that this lot is the appropriate place for that density.
That's fair. But it also might not be the best lot for even more homes. Like, maybe just nothing goes there, because putting too many more houses up that mountain just creates traffic until we can eventually get... Like, I don't think there's ever SkyTrain plans to go that far in that direction.
More chairlifts.
Yeah, it'll have to be chairlifts down the mountain.
Yeah, like, I think it's it's good. It's good that they are beginning to take a hint. Like, they're beginning to clue in to the problem. Would have been nice if it were 10 years ago. I don't know what they're doing as an alternative, but, like, good for them.
In another hearing at Coquitlam City Council, a townhome development was brought forward, and again, Robert Mazzarolo was the sole dissent opposing this set of townhomes, which you would think would be the ideal kind of density he would be supporting. But in this case, he argues that there are too few family units in it. In fact, townhomes should be purely for families in his mind, with multi-bedrooms. This is a 59-unit development in Burquitlam. It would include 4 studio townhomes, 10 one-bedrooms, 28 two-bedrooms, and 17 three-bedrooms. Mazzarolo's key thing to highlight is that in Burquitlam there are quite a few towers that include studio and one-bedroom apartments. Let's keep the townhomes that have access to green space for places with multi-bedrooms so that kids and families could live in them and get outside easier.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong. Yeah, I don't really actually have all that much to say. I'm glad that people have finally clued into what the problem is that we are, like, making neighborhoods basically unlivable for families of anything less than, like, millionaire status. It's a good thing that finally some public officials are taking note and taking at least stances that are doing the right thing. It's well done. Well done.
On the whole, I think, like, I agree with the sentiment, but this unit development is 14 of 59 units are studio and one bedroom, and, like, is that bad enough to kill it? I don't know. But, you know, I think there is value in that one dissent voice on a council, sure. Even if, like, they're not 100% right, just having that vote on record is valuable in many ways to push the kind of direction.
Maybe the next development is going to, like, you know, move in that direction. I think it's a good thing.
And finally, speaking of development, there's just a nice, good read by Christopher Chung in the Tyee from August 14th that I want to highlight. That's on the Burnaby Housing Authority. This is the new agency that the city is about to launch to really move Burnaby ahead on affordable housing development. I say this is a good news story because we're so lacking good housing policy, and Burnaby has been a very complicated city in terms of housing for a number of years. We talked a lot about how the 2018 election was largely fought in Burnaby around this question of, is the right kind of housing being built in Burnaby, with the number of towers that have gone up, the displacement of affordable rental low-rises, while single-family neighborhoods have been protected. And Hurley and his housing task force did put forward a lot of work on this and some good recommendations, but the substantive movement has been a little bit slower. They put some good rental protections in, but where has been the development? And this signals a pretty good sign that Burnaby is going to put money where its mouth is.
And, like, it's going to be a test case for other municipalities. Like, Vancouver doesn't innovate really on this kind of stuff. It is going to be, like, it's unfortunate that this is a thing that is downloaded from the provincial government that should be doing this, but they're not. And the kind of private method of doing this has proven to be mired in controversies, shall we say. So, like, it is one of the things where, like, government kind of has to take the lead. And if it has to be the municipal government, it has to be the municipal government.
Yeah. Technically, Vancouver has its own housing authority as well, and that has had stronger and weaker years over its history. Apparently, the resort municipalities of Whistler and Tofino also have housing authorities, but that's about it in the province. And the latter two there are largely to ensure that local workers in those resort communities can have somewhere to live, which is very important. That's important everywhere.
Yeah. It's almost like they've got their head around the problem, and they see, other places can see, and they just don't understand that it also applies to them.
So yeah, we'll keep our eye on this as the consultations finish and they launch this, and hopefully in the new year we start seeing some real movement from Burnaby on building affordable housing for Burnaby residents, and that encourages more.
Yeah. In the meantime, maybe they can stay at the YMCA. That, of course, is my very awkward segue into what we end every episode of the Cambie Report with, a Vancouverada, a little tidbit from Vancouver's history. This one covers the village people's famous song, YMCA.
Yeah, a piece in CBC. No journalist is named on this, but they quote Glenn Chack, the creator and tour guide of the Really Gay History Tour, which I've heard really good things about.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
His story is that the village people were in the city of Vancouver working on an album, and the producer asked, what was this YMCA that they saw on Burrard Street over there, the Robert Lee location, during a lunch break? And the lead singer explained what it was, and he says to his producer, "Let me guess, you want me to write a song about it?"
And so they did. Basically, this song appeared on the Village People's 1978 album Cruisin' and did reach number 2 on the Billboard's Hot 100. It was written in Vancouver and inspired by the Robert Lee YMCA, but it is, kind of more broadly incorporating all YMCAs in a kind of milieu or pastiche of YMCA across the North American continent.
Officially, the song is about hanging out in urban neighborhoods in your youth. And if you say it's about going for illicit gay sex, you could get sued by the creators and the village people.
Good Lord. Okay. Well, we would never want to imply something like that, and so I think it's best that we end this episode of the Cambie Report. For Leg and Boot Media, I'm Matthew Naylor.
I'm Ian Bushfield.
Good day.
It's raining in Guangzhou, Celsius 33. The weather woman wants what awaits on the CBC. All across Cascadia, temperatures they will rise. Smoky summer is here to stay, no sea breeze to blow it away. We will keep you apprised, for we don't let coming to the west, to the west. The mercury is rising, no relief on the horizon. Just 7 days of summer to survive. Stay alive. The thermometer today reads 39. If the wind would blow it, it would be just warm, not deadly hot. People were saying we don't get weather like this a lot. My house was built for rain, not heat. I haven't got AC, just a fan. I'll just play for the return of the sea breeze. They were at each apartment and house, another of its own, and nobody could sleep without a way to cool their home. 3 days and they're exhausted, no way to keep themselves cool. Can't be outside of the 6-hour in a local swimming pool. Oh, we don't let coming to the west, to the west. The mercury is rising, no relief on the horizon. Just 7 days of summer to survive. Stay alive. The thermometer today is 41, so curse the sun. Death came first for the infirm and elderly. In the midst of a pandemic, no one to check in and see if they were alright, so they sweated quarantined inside. days would go by before someone would realize they died. Seeing 23 rolls through the tinder dry brush, they got somewhere to go, the conductor is in a rush. They're too fast for the turn, their brake box are too spark and flame. Now all that's left of Leighton are its ruins and name. The drought's a servant of the blaze, fires that go on for days, ripping through the town reserve and forest without pause. The nation's highest temperature on record preceded the burn that consumed 2 souls, the town of its history and lost. A heat dome's a coming to the west, to the west. The mercury is rising, no relief on the horizon. Just 7 days of summer to survive. Stay alive. The thermometer today reads 42. Just try to pull through. Classical heat stroke is a bad way to die when your body's calorific content's way too high. Your organs shut down one by one, your mind takes its leave too, till you pass out and die breathing delirious and confused. On the 7th day the winds return, temperatures start to fall, and people start to search for who's to blame for it all. Victoria says it's weather, CN has lawyers retained, and 619 people find themselves in their graves. Oh, a heat domes are coming to the west, to the west. The mercury is rising, no relief on the horizon. Just 7 days of summer to survive. Stay alive, stay alive, stay alive. Through those 7 days of summer to survive.